Welcome to the Behind the Tee podcast with Rob and Kelly. Hey, Rob, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
Not too bad. Just, surviving the second lockdown that we're going through.
That's right. Obeying curfew, I hope.
Yes, it's the first time I'm doing a curfew, which is kind of weird, but also at the same time, I never leave my house in the evenings anyways in the wintertime because it's dark and cold.
I know. It's surprisingly easy to obey. It's not like you can do anything anyway. We can't go curling.
No, and that's one thing I don't miss is those 9 p.m. late night ladder games where you have to go outside at minus 30 in the dark. Have to say, not as much as I miss curling, I do not miss that aspect of it.
Yes, and that's a well-planned segue into what we're going to talk about.
Yeah. So this week's episode is all about clubs and club memberships, more specifically. In the past couple years, we've definitely seen some clubs shutting down and some clubs struggling to have a healthy membership, especially with an aging population and not getting the younger generation into the club and to pay for and become club members. And I think especially next year is going to be interesting just to see how many clubs survive this pandemic. I know our club didn't open at all, or they kind of did. We had practice
That's
ice
right.
for
They
what,
put in the ice, hoping that we could get a second half of a season, but the COVID situation, everywhere, but particularly in Quebec, just got worse and worse and worse. And we can't even leave our house after 8 p.m., let alone go curling. So
yeah. And, the fact that our club works a lot, has a lot of rentals, and that's a big source of income for them, which they're not getting this year. And I'm sure the same is affecting other clubs as well. So yeah, this week we're just going to kind of go through what we think clubs can do better to increase their membership and especially get some of the younger generation in. And just to tell, not to age us a little bit, but I guess we're in the millennial demographic, if you will. So we're not like the Gen Zers that are coming up, but we're not old people.
We apologize to anyone who just was offended, which is now everybody outside of our age group.
We're between the Gen Xers and the Gen Zers.
Right. We're Gen Yers if we're playing this alphabetically. If that's not a thing, maybe it is now. I don't know.
So I guess all of our comments are kind of coming through the lens of a millennial, if you will.
And that's going to be our excuse for because one of the common questions I get, Kelly, is, it's pretty easy for me to sit here and complain. And I'm very good at that. But my attitude is always, if you're going to complain about something, maybe you should actually offer to help. Mm-hmm. And so I do acknowledge that. Here we are with our opinions. Maybe we should help. Maybe we should get it more involved. But using that millennial, Gen Y, whatever we're calling it, excuse, we're very busy. We can barely find time to sit down for a half hour and record this podcast every weekend. We don't have time to run our curling clubs. So, But here are our opinions anyway.
Here are our opinions. And if anyone wants to take them and run with them, feel free. We don't even need their credit. Curling Canada is also well aware of the situation. And every couple of years, they send out a survey and they do a little analysis of what the curlers are in Canada, like the player profile, but then also how the clubs are doing and whatnot. So all of this information that we're going to be talking about today can be found on the Curling Canada website. The page is called Curling Canada Survey and Reports. So I guess to start this off, let's just give a brief overview of what the average Canadian curler is in Canada. This survey was done in 2015, so I'm sure
things have changed a little bit.
Yeah, but
probably
I think
not significantly, right?
Yeah, I think it's still more or less accurate. So obviously there are more male curlers than female curlers out there. Out of the survey respondents, 64% were male and 36% were female.
We knew that because at our club, it's really hard to form a mixed team.
Oh my goodness. And this is something we can bring up too in later points. Also, no surprise, the in terms of age demographics, the highest age group is the 35 to 50, then followed by the 50 to 65. So we're definitely a sport that caters more towards the older crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And there's certain reasons for that too as well, which we'll go into. And then in terms of where is the sport played across Canada, so 45% of players are in Ontario. Again, no surprise, it's the province with the largest population, followed by the prairies at 25%. So that includes Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. Again, not surprising. It's really part of like the culture there. There's a
Absolutely.
curling club in like every small town, or there was at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But surprisingly, the third most populous province is with curlers is Quebec at 18%, which I personally thought was I was a little surprised by this.
Okay, wait. I call fake news on this. Let's back up for a moment. When you said the prairies, like which province, or is it all
It's
of them?
all three of them together.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right.
Yeah.
So there. That's a manipulating stat there. So we're not number 3. We're number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
But in terms of regions in Canada, you have the Maritimes, Quebec, Ontario, the Prairies, BC, and the Northern
yeah.
Territory.
I'm just trying to get a picture of like actually how many curlers there are. So that's good. We're better than we thought. So we're justified when we say bad things about New Brunswick then.
Exactly.
I'm just kidding. It's somehow New Brunswick comes up always as our example of like a province that gets kicked around. Sorry, New Brunswick.
But yeah, kind of surprised because like curling is definitely not big here in Quebec. You know, you tell anyone.
It's always secondary to hockey and football and pretty much any other sport.
Every other sport. Some people don't even know what curling is. It's a very Anglo-Saxon sport, not very French. And then after that, it's BC at 5%. There's a huge gap after Quebec. So that's pretty much what the demographic is of the sport across the country. And then they also have a second survey that they sent out to all the curling clubs in Canada. This was done in 2018. And it's a very long survey. We're not going to go through all of the responses because it was
40 pages.
Yeah, exactly. But we'll kind of like
go to the highlights.
Exactly. Okay, so one of the big questions that was asked is, has the club seen an increase in membership since 2010? So like over the past 8 years, has there been growth within the club? And the results were pretty split. So 34% said yes, their club gained members. 34% said they actually they lost members.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally 30% said no change. So it's pretty even, with most of the clubs just not seeing any growth or losing members. So if you decide to read the survey, there is a long list of reasons why certain clubs gained membership or lost. So we'll kind of touch on the most common or like most repeated reasons. Mm-hmm. And I guess, Rob, do you want us to start with the reasons why they've lost membership? Because a lot of these I can totally agree with.
Yeah. I mean, I read through the list very briefly before we came on air. There's, well, first of all, I keep seeing the word hockey.
Yes.
A lot of clubs. I don't know if this would really apply to us because we live in the middle of a city, but maybe if you're in somewhere small town and there's the curling club and there's the hockey rink across the street, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, curling is never gonna, I'm sorry to say it, like it's never gonna beat hockey in Canada. Hockey just wins all around. But basically, one of the reasons that came out as to why clubs are losing people within that like 30 to 40 age group, even late 20s, is when they're really busy, but this is the time where people have children that are, you know, able to do other sports or have other activities. So they're too busy with raising their kids to go curling. And a lot of one of the reasons that was mentioned is that a lot of these kids are enrolled in hockey and the parents are busy bringing their kids to hockey. And I did not grow up in a hockey family. I don't know about you, Rob.
Nope.
From what I've heard, it is a very time-consuming sport.
And incredibly expensive. we were complaining about like the cost of curling equipment on a podcast recently, but we could go buy like 3 pairs of curling shoes each, even though I think they're extremely overpriced, just saying. And that would be nothing compared to hockey equipment.
Yeah, and I don't have kids right now, but if I ever do have kids, let me tell you,
Curling's cheaper.
I am not putting them into hockey. I will be putting them
Take
into
out a second
curling.
mortgage for hockey.
Jeez. But it's not just the cost too, but it's the early morning practices. Like I know some boys in elementary school, some boys in my class, they'd have practice before school that started at 8 a.m. And there's no way I'm waking up at 5 in the morning to bring my kid to an arena and watch them play hockey.
Although I hate to rain on that, and it's that if you get them in curling, I think that's going to happen too. We've had our fair share of early morning driving to the middle of nowhere.
True, but it's not like a weekly thing necessarily.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I'd much rather sacrifice my time and drive 10 hours to Baie-Comeau once a year than wake up early to go to practice twice a week or something.
That's it. At least for practice for curling, we can put those at more comfortable times, not 5 in the morning.
Yeah, so maybe this is a thing for Curling Canada. Next time you design your next PSA commercial that is targeted to this demographic, have a commercial where they're sending their kids to curling. Or Tim Hortons too, they should do that. Every year they come out with commercials of the parent in the hockey rink watching their kid play. Next time, bring your kid to a curling club. Why Tim Hortons is a huge sponsor of curling. Why don't they have a commercial like that? Like a heartwarming, feely one.
Yeah, one of those ones that we would complain about in our commercials episode. But they they're also, I think the problem is they're also major hockey sponsors, and they're going to get more of their income from their the time they devote to hockey. But hey, Tim Hortons, just be the winter sport sponsor of this country.
Mm-hmm. Just
maybe even Kelly will buy a coffee from Tim Hortons if you
I don't know. I think they have to do a lot more for that. Story for another time, and I don't want to get us on any more hate lists. But yeah, that's and I know like in Quebec here, hockey is super dominant, but I think it's across the country, it's just a huge sport for especially the boys. And I think you would think too that like I grew up in a curling family, so that's kind of how, and you did too, right? Like that's how we got into curling. Our parents played, so it was easy for us to just adopt the sport. It was kind of like a way of life, and we didn't know any better.
Yeah. So imagine how much harder it is to get people to just kind of randomly fall into it and then to actually pursue it.
But then you would also think that other people like us would then start families and then bring their kids into curling as well, but that doesn't really necessarily seem to be the case. If anything, we're losing a lot of kids once they age out of juniors, so that's like another problem that we can go into. So the other main reason that came up on this list was aging membership. So our club is guilty of this, where the average age is definitely over 50, and unfortunately people pass away. It's the process of life. And they're just not bringing in the newer generation as quickly. And we've seen this too. Like we've played in juniors, and a good handful of us kind of stopped playing, and not just stopped competing, like just stopped playing after graduating, if you will.
Yeah, I was thinking of that the other day because we were all, I was going to say we were all friends. There was some drama there too between some people, but we were
There's always drama.
Yeah, but we were a big entourage. Let's use that word. There was my team, there was your team, there were several teams out of clubs in Montreal. There were several teams out of clubs all over Quebec. There were 50 of us that we could all name on a first name basis that we were all. And how many of them are still curling? I'd be like handful. Maybe 10 out of 50, maybe even less.
I think some people too, like I did it too, where after I graduated university, I kind of stopped playing for a bit, but then I came back. So like there is that too that's happening. And this is I think this is one of the reasons why too, is because one, you don't necessarily have time to. Once you age out of juniors, it happens around the same time that you finish university, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you're broke and curling memberships are really expensive, and now that you're no longer a student, you can't benefit from that reduced student rate.
That's
So
right.
that's definitely something that
That was a big financial hit when we turned 20.
yeah, you're just like, I have other stuff like I have bills to pay as well, and you're starting a new career if you're not going to grad school, and you might not necessarily have all the funds you need.
Yeah.
Some
And
people have to pay student loans, like, it's just where are you gonna cut? Well, in terms of things that happen in your life, curling is probably one of them,
yeah.
unfortunately.
And on an optimistic way of thinking out of it, it's as much as I'd love to see more people our age start playing, I think, as you just said, we have to accept the fact that that is a tough demographic to reel in, not because of a lack of interest per se, just that we've got so many other things that we have to balance. I find it really hard to get to the curling club for really either draw, to be honest with you, early or late, working full time, having to take care of everything else that I have to as an adult. And just adulting sucks, let's be honest.
Yeah. But that point you said on working full time, like depending on what field you are or what job you have, you might not necessarily have the flexibility to, be like, okay, it's 5 o'clock. I gotta go because I have a curling game, and you're like a junior. It's your first year on the job. Sometimes it's just not possible. Um,
Yeah,
of course, this is just depending on what you do as a career.
that's right. And we don't have kids. I imagine like if I had kids, there's going to come a point where I'll just be like, I can't do this anymore.
Hmm.
And maybe that's why when we mentioned the 55, or I don't like using specific numbers, but 55 plus. Maybe I think one of the things about that is that you may not necessarily be retiring yet, but you chances are if you have kids, they don't need you to look after them every Tuesday, Thursday night. You can get away for an evening and
Hmm.
curl.
Yeah, and the curling clubs too, the way they are now, I mean, this is just a broad generalization. It's also not necessarily the best place where you can just bring your kids, sit them down behind the ice, like, "Hey, sit there, mom's gonna play a game now." It's not. Maybe that's an idea. Have a little,
Actually, yeah, like a daycare or something.
yeah, but not a daycare, but more like of a maybe like just have a little play area for the kids.
That's
You
really
know,
smart. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
that could be something too. Like I think the
Get the bartender to babysit.
yeah, if the kids are being too rowdy, just like give them a
Just
little shot in
put a
there,
whiskey there or
put a little
something.
something in, yeah. Well, hey, they gotta learn if they're gonna start curling, right? It's one of the key things is being able to manage the bar.
That's right.
But yeah, I think one thing is just the clubs are gonna have to change a little bit how they're structured and have a little more flexibility in how the leagues are run and membership fees. Like there is interest in our age group, definitely more than there was in the past. And especially after every Olympic, I know people are like, "Oh my god, you curl! I saw it on TV. I really want to try," and everything. I hear that all the time.
Yeah, me too.
But and I don't want to throw our club under the bus. I've been at other clubs, and it's the
It's
same
the
thing
same
too.
story everywhere.
Very difficult to bring new people in.
Yes. And the structure that the clubs have lined up to bring in potential new members or just even short-term curlers, let's call it that, people that are not really going to pursue it, but are going to try it for a little bit. The structure for them is just all wrong.
No, because right now the only options you have to bring a friend curling is one, rent out a sheet for an hour, which is going to cost you like $150. And like I'm not going to tell my friend, hey, do you have like $100 so we can go curling for an hour? No, and already that I'm paying $500 a year to be a part of a club, or the open house, which happens once at the
Once a
beginning.
year or twice. Sometimes they do a bonus one, like post Olympics, they might throw another one in. But
Yeah, or like in January kind of thing. But yeah, that's that one weekend at the beginning of the year. And let's say you bring people or even new people who decide to come on their own, come to the open house, love it and would like to play more. Their only option is to pay a full-time membership for a year or for a year
or a
that
one night a
runs.
week membership. But yeah, something that runs the whole year.
But it's a huge commitment in that it's a lot of money, and then a year is what, October, September for some clubs to April?
Yeah, and just being on the ice for one or trying anything once to me is not enough of a sample size to say if you like it or not.
Mhm.
And I know like this is a bit of a negative thought, but I know that if I were a new curler, and like you said, we've grown up with curling our whole lives, it's been in our family, but like let's say that you and I walked in, had no experience in curling, and we just wanted to try this. I could see myself going to an open house, but the moment they tell me, okay, now your next thing is you have to pick a night and you have to come every night, or that's the next option to you, I'd be like, thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, and especially or if you're a new curler completely green, sometimes you don't always have the choice depending on the club's rules. Some of them only have like learn to curl leagues or like it's your first year, you have to be part of this league that's on Monday nights at 7 p.m. Before you can choose any other league to play because you can't. That's the problem with curling too.
You can't just fall into it right away. Yeah. Like you've got to get a bit of a background training first.
Yeah, you need some formal instruction. That first hump is pretty high. So, yeah, there definitely some flexibility there. And even as people like us who love to play, I would enjoy some flexibility too. I mean, right now we play Tuesday, or in a regular year, we play the ladder at Tuesday night, which is fun, but it's a long season and sometimes I don't want to play Tuesday night.
I know, especially when we have the late draw.
Especially. And well, here's the thing too, okay?
Hmm.
So the late draw is at 9, and if we play the full 8 ends, which thankfully we don't normally
We
go
will
full,
if it's a late draw.
yeah, just
That's
Murphy's
when we
Law.
do. Yep.
But let's say we do go the full 8 ends, like you would not be getting off the ice till 11. And
Hmm.
then on top of that, well, obviously you have to stick around and have a drink. So you're not getting home till 12:30, and, like, I gotta be at work at 8 a.m. the next day, like, it's I'm exhausted.
Yeah,
Like, I'm
and that's a
tired.
hard problem to solve because I'm thinking I don't like the late draws either, although I struggle with the early draws to make it to the club on time. And I know
Mhm.
talking to a lot of members that curl at our club, so do they. Some like no one likes late draws, but some people do prefer them just because they know they'll make it. Whereas if you're leaving work at 5 o'clock and you've got a
Mhm.
6:30 game in Montreal, that's not a given that you're going to make it in time.
No, and that's it. It depends on your job too. Like, for instance, I would have the flexibility to leave and make a 6 p.m. draw, also depending where the curling club is, but others don't. If you have, like, a very strict work schedule, it's a challenge too. And we know also at our clubs, a lot of ladder teams aren't just a four-man team, they're like 5 or 6 men team just because there's
They
always
know they're
people
going to
bailing. And
yeah.
even we've seen there's been 5 or 6 man teams where they show up at a game and there are only 3 people and couldn't get a spare.
Oh yeah.
Because, yeah, life happens and, work aside, sometimes other things pop up that you can't control for and you can't make your game.
That's right. It's a quick pet peeve of mine, by the way, that when we're at the club and we have a game at 6:30 and it's 6:29 and there's maybe 5 people in the building, there's
Mhm.
still some people filtering in, but I mean, I don't really blame them. It's hard to get anywhere these days in a big city.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I guess it's kinda easier in a small town, but then again, even if you're in a small town and you're commuting to the city, some people's commutes can be, well over an hour, so
Yeah.
it's, a little struggle. But back to, like, bringing friends in too, like, let's say we have friends that would be interested in picking up the sport. There's not really an option for us to play together necessarily, just because, like, one, they have to be part of the Learn to Curl group for the first bit, and we play in a more competitive, quote unquote, competitive ladder league. It's the most competitive league in the club.
Right.
Um, but there's not like too much in between Really?
No, there's
Um,
I think some clubs handle, like, I know our club has an introductory league where they take some experienced players and they skip, and then the front end and the thirds are people that are newer to the sport. I've always
mhm,
kind of liked that as a model. I think that's a pretty good way to integrate relatively new curlers, but just having some kind of mechanism where we could bring potentially 20 friends who are interested in being maybe not one night a week curlers, but in going a couple of times without
mhm.
charging them $400.
Yeah, it would be interesting if there is some sort of, like, beer league, where you don't necessarily sign up with a team, you essentially sign up for the league, and it could be a Thursday night or something,
Yeah.
that's perfect night for beer league because no one cares
Yeah.
about Fridays, um, and then you kind of go and then depending on who shows up, or maybe you have to sign up, "Okay, I'm coming these weeks," if you need more, like, solid numbers, but it's more informal and you kind of go as when you want. And instead of maybe paying a full membership, you just pay when you go. So it's like 20 bucks every time you go or whatever fee is
There you go. And
reasonable.
you could just scrimmage. You could just be like, well,
Yeah.
we're eight people and we'll like we can play a game.
And you can play a game, or if you want, you can play two games of doubles. Like, I know. I think that would be a lot easier to convince new people, especially our age. The headlines millennials are afraid of commitment. Well, it's a way to get into the sport without a huge commitment. A lot of other gyms do this too. I like to go to like spin class, like dance classes and stuff.
Right.
And they have the like a la carte option where you buy 10 classes that are good for the year and you kind of go when you
There.
can or when
I
you
th-
want. Or
I think you just
even
said it perfectly. That
yeah,
that would be way more suitable for us.
the club could do that too, a package of, yeah, 10 games or something that could work. Even if you wanna have do the same for a more standard league like the ladder, just have the ladder just be shorter. So,
Yeah.
a 4-week round robin, and so you can just play like, subscribe for that 4 weeks and just do that, and then we just restart. Maybe 4 weeks is a little short.
Or just maybe getting rid of the whole like Monday night is this night is instructional night, Tuesday night is competitive night, Wednesday night is mixed night, or whatever. Because I know different clubs have different things on, but everybody has a really set schedule of what they do on each day of the week. And I'm wondering if like, do we need something routine for every night? Can it be kind of Tuesday night is whatever the heck you want night? I don't know. I'm
Like that beer league. I don't
Yeah,
know.
but, like, having open space for people that wanna show up and if the demand ever got there. I'm just thinking that the structure part of everything is a little bit too much. In our
Yeah.
quest to be more flexible, maybe that's one of the things we can gradually do away with, or just
Mhm.
maybe, like, a time this isn't really related to bringing in members, but just I think we should be experimenting more. We should have more people playing mixed doubles. We should have people playing triples, which, I briefly read the rules about once, and it's a little bit confusing, but I love it.
I think we should do a whole episode on
Okay,
triples
yeah,
and
we'll
try
do
to,
that.
like, figure it out ourselves because
More on that later.
I just learned about that this year, and I'm very
Me too,
curious.
yeah, I'm intrigued.
But I think too, like, just definitely have a diversify the types of leagues. Definitely every club should have a mixed doubles league from now on. Like,
Yes,
I
it's
don't
a
understand why they don't, because I think the demand is there. And like I think I brought this point up a couple weeks back, but doubles is also a great way to get people into the club, especially if you have couples that are coming in that they want to try the sport. Well, here, go and play mixed doubles. Like,
right, and I think we mentioned it before, we gotta be careful with that because I
mhm.
wouldn't want anybody relatively new chasing their own rock. If you don't know the dangers of chasing your own rock, listen to our mixed doubles episode where I famously bulldozed a bunch of rocks, but
Yeah, but you could do modified rules. Like you could add a no sweeping rule or something.
yeah, exactly. I mean, we need to be flexible, and I think that, and first of all, I'm kind of not that into, I mean, traditional curling anymore. Like you've been saying, mixed doubles deserves a lot more. It should be taking away from some of the regular curling. And this is a very quick, unrelated point. I'm sorry to do this, but you and I were chatting during the week, and we were talking about how the Curling Canada put out a video montage of the top 20 shots of the year or something like that. And I got so mad because one of them was this really good shot by Kevin Cooey to win a game at the Briar. And
In the 10th end too, right?
yeah, it was the 10th end. He has a shot for one, and he's going, no, I'm going to play this in off with a really bad angle for two because I'm never going to win in an extra end. But the point that I was upset about was that the score is 2-1. It's 2-1 in the 10th end. Now, maybe they had like 16 rocks in play and they just cleared them all out. Maybe, I don't know. I don't remember seeing that game.
I doubt that.
But yeah, the regular game needs some tweaking, and or really variations deserve more prominence.
Well, it's a great point you bring up too. Mixed doubles is a lot shorter than a regular curling game, and that was one of the points that was mentioned in the survey, is that games are too long, and with full games, like a full length game, you can only have 2 draws an evening, and that's how you get the 6 p.m. draw and the 9 p.m. draw. But mixed doubles is a lot shorter, so you can have like a 7 and an 8:30 game.
And if you have a big facility and you're not filling up all the sheets, well, no problem there.
Yeah, another thing would be great is skins. I'd like to see a skins league. And that's one that maybe doesn't have to happen every week, but it could be every other week, alternating with another league, you know? Like there's a lot of stuff you can do.
One thing that I thought of too, sorry, I don't know if this is the appropriate time to bring it up, but I've had friends drop by the club before, and unfortunately, I'm not allowed to take them on the ice, even though they might say like, "Oh, can I try doing this once?" My attitude is, "Yeah, sure, come on."
Yeah.
But we know that we're going to get our wrist slapped if we do that, because it's not just at our club; it's at every club. They'll tell you no, they must join the instructional league. You're not allowed to bring friends if they're not members. But I've had members in the building, and maybe I've been sneaky and brought them out onto the ice, which I'm now saying over a podcast. Very smart of me. But they like the bar.
Yeah. Some
Yeah.
people don't even realize there's a bar, and I'm like,
Yes.
yo, just come and have a drink.
That's it.
And
watch the games.
if I would love that, and we all, okay, I might cut this out, but we all know who complains, right? It's not our generation that's complaining about bringing non-members on the ice. It's the very old school thought people, you know.
We're trying to find the best politically correct way to frame this, but I know, and I think that kind of management or micromanagement or whatever you want to call it is not compatible with modern curling. And
it's like they want to keep the exclusivity of the club, which is not going to help. So
yes. Oh, I can't. Just a quick aside, like because we've been at this for a while. At least there have been some improvements, because when we were juniors, it might have been your dad, but I know it was my dad too. They were watching us curl. Maybe it wasn't your dad, but anyway, somebody came over and told excuse me, sir, you are in a curling club. Remove your baseball cap.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's my dad too.
That's why I was it was definitely not just my dad, because he looked to somebody. I don't know if it was your dad or one of their teammates, but I just say that because I know he wore a baseball cap as well.
Well, there are some. Well, here's the thing too. It's also quite common for curling clubs to be attached to a golf course, which also that is another
the country club vibe.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe the country club vibe of, I know there was one here near where we live where for the longest time you couldn't wear jeans in, but it was like a curling club golf course that had that country club feel.
Right. Very fancy.
But I think one of the reasons too why there are so many golf and curling clubs is that the curling club takes the golf members and the people can golf in the summertime and curl in the wintertime. Like maybe curling clubs can look and join other type of sports, like
the club that we both played juniors at had a lawn bowling thing right next to it.
Like kind of a more, I guess, moving away from the curling club aspect and more into a sports complex.
Yes, like even though we're competing with other sports, maybe a partnership with other sports is not a bad idea.
Well, you need to partner with a summer sport.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Something that won't directly.
The only issue I have with that though is because I don't. You've been to the Saville Center in Edmonton, right? They're partnered with I think it's a tennis court.
Yeah, there's a whole tennis thing there.
Exactly, and it's part of this huge, like, sports complex. I think it's close to, like, the University of Alberta. Anyways, so it's a great club. It's so many sheets, and I think it's a very, like, successful club. The only thing that I don't like about it is that it loses that curling club look and feel.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, so and what I'm talking about is the old curling club that was built in the '50s and clearly not renovated since, but it has
The
which
leaky roof and the questionable paintings, and
exactly, but it has, like, a nice fireplace, comfy sofas, with the bar, like
they're really nice and cozy places.
yeah. Yeah, I guess that's what I'm like, I guess you could there's a way to modernize it, but that cozy feel, that we
Yeah.
have, and if you move to a more sports complex, like, model, you lose that. So maybe if there's a way to have the curling club attached to the sporting complex, but have the interior club part maybe not as
Interior design is a big part of designing a new curling club because I know they all have that hockey rink frame, but they got if I mean, okay, I get that. Your ice shed is going to look very metallic and
mhm.
that look that we all know, but at least
If you have a nice member area that you want to, that is
make
nice
it
to, like,
yeah,
stay in, I think that's definitely, gonna keep people.
right. And then people will be inclined to not wear their baseball caps. Oh, and I have to say one other quick thing about that because I don't
Yeah.
know if, like my so my dad got yelled at for that. My mom got yelled at for answering a cell phone at a curling club.
Oh my goodness.
And it's not like she was there talking very loudly so everyone she like her phone rang, she stepped away from the glass and somebody came and tapped her on the shoulder and was like, "Excuse me, put your cell phone away." And just think about like how fortunately I've never had that happen to me. And at least clubs from my understanding have relaxed that kind of elitist
Well, I can see someone say that in, like, 2002 when cell phones
right,
were
which
the
is
new thing.
when we're talking, I guess, but that's clearly something that is not going to fly in a modern curling club right now. And
Mhm.
if you're reminiscing for the good old days when people would not wear jeans to the club, well, too damn bad. That's not
Yeah.
going to happen. And so it's just at least I think people can adapt. And I think clubs are actually open to adapting and they want these ideas. But I think, yeah, it just comes down to flexibility.
It depends, like, who's running the club too. If you have a bunch of people who are very set in their ways and they have the mentality of, "This is how we've always done it, and this therefore we should always do it this way," you're gonna keep losing members.
Yeah, you could manage that way when you had lineups around the block to join the club, but not the case anymore.
I do understand that, like, we are a little bit part of the problem because we're probably, like, the people who should be moving, like, applying for these positions and being more prominent in on, like, the board or problem is that we don't have time to do
That's
it.
it. Yeah, and in the defense of the club that we curl at, I have been asked to help out, and I appreciate the fact that they were like that they valued my opinion and everything. It's just that I don't have the time to offer. I have
Mhm.
the time barely to sit on the sidelines and complain. But but to actually change things, whoa, that's but
Yeah.
actually, you know, because you're talking about the famous age group things, it's like when we retire, we may as well volunteer to help run a club. Like
Mhm.
we'll have more time to do things then, but right now we're at an awkward age where I barely have time to make my own dinner.
Oh, yeah. Like, do you know how many times I've ordered Uber Eats? Like
I
but I
know.
think it's that's a thing. It is hard, like, our age group, we're really busy with a lot of things, but we do have ideas. So I guess it's just having a committee, regardless of what their age is, we're not ageist here, just being open to change and modernization. Funny enough, there was a question on the survey that asked, like, how do you manage your curling club? Like, what software do you use to manage, like, the
I noticed that
roster
question. Yeah.
and everything? And there was a couple, programs that I've never heard of before, but they're clearly just by the title, you can see that there were curling club management programs. And then there was one, it was Excel, and the majority of curling clubs use Excel to manage their curling club.
Uh-huh. So there's probably a
Mhm.
lot that they're missing if like
Yeah.
there's specific programs for.
Well, do you know how hard it was to get an online calendar?
I know.
So we've done a lot of critiquing here and brought up a lot of good points of things that curling clubs can do to change. But there are certain limitations that are outside of the control of like the board of directors for each curling club. And this was brought up multiple times in the survey. And this has to do with people leaving small towns. So, like we mentioned earlier in the podcast, especially in the prairies, like every town, or if not every other town, had a curling club, and that's everyone in the town curled. But this is a problem that's been happening all over the country, where people are migrating to the cities, basically Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, Calgary in there. Um, and so all of these small towns are one left with an aging population.
Although that was true pre-pandemic. Apparently that's being reversed by COVID, but I don't know if it'll affect things that much.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, people are moving away from the cities, but let's be real. Like they're moving to the greater area.
Yeah,
Not
like
so
we're still
much.
close enough to the city. My rent tells me that, so.
Yeah, exactly. Not so much. So many people are going into the small towns. So that unfortunately is a problem. It's not the curling club's fault. There's nothing they can do to change that if the demographics of the town are changing. Um, which, yeah,
Mhm.
I don't have anything else to add on that
Yeah,
point.
that I don't know how to fix.
Yeah, I mean, we can tell, like, we can say all the millennials like go buy a house in the boonies, but I'm not one of them, so it's not up to me to comment on
No.
that. Um, And I think that's just a whole other socioeconomic issue that
Yeah.
our podcast is not about. And yeah, so finally, we're in that age group. We're out of juniors, but we're still part of the young demographic, if you will, of the curling clubs. Um, but one initiative that's been going on for quite a few years is the Rocks and Rings program. And I think you've seen it at your school
Yeah,
before, right?
I know I mentioned it once that I've tried it. It was brought into my class because I'm a teacher as a surprise Christmas gift. It was part of we did a gift exchange, and that was my gift is that somebody got me a class of Rocks and Rings, and the kids loved it.
Mhm. Yeah, and we see the commercial uh, every curling
Oh, yes, we
spot
do.
on TV, like, oh, this is so annoying. But yeah, the point of the program was to get, young kids, like, it's geared to elementary school
Mhm.
children interested in curling. And that was one of the questions in the survey was how many children migrated from the Rocks and Rings program in their school to joining the junior program at the curling club, because pretty much every curling club has a junior program, and only about 30% said that they had a migration of children join the club. So I don't know if that's
I don't know if that's good or
good.
bad. Yeah.
Yeah,
It
I
doesn't
mean,
sound good, but
no.
when I think of retaining people in curling, maybe that is a decent rate of return. Um,
Yeah, it's hard to I wish there's they asked, like, a couple more follow-up questions, like, if kids went to like, for what reasons did they not join? Or I don't
yeah,
know.
I'm proud of myself. I just said rate of return. It reminds me of that World Financial Group
Group.
commercial. Sorry. Quick aside. But actually, one other thing on the note on the topic of schools, because curling in is not a big thing in schools, from what I understand. Certainly not in Quebec. In
Mhm,
Ontario, there's like, from my understanding, big high school leagues that are quite competitive. Uh, Not here where we live. But that being said, there's a couple of schools that get together and that have a little informal curling league, and so I'm helping out with our school. We have a curling team that competes against some of the other local schools, and a couple of the kids that are involved at our school are competitive. They play on their own time, and but a lot of them are just kids that are wanting to try this for the first time. And it's
mhm,
really interesting because the ad in our little, well, we're not doing anything this year, obviously, but last year at our school, we put out an ad saying anybody who wants to try curling, come let us know, come stop by. And we had about 30 to 40 kids show up, which
wow.
I was shocked at. It was we did not in
Mhm.
we put no effort into this marketing campaign. It was just a very quick email to the student bulletin thing, and 30 or something kids showed up. Did they all stick? No. Did they all want to pursue curling long term? Probably not. But I was really impressed that 30 kids, because again, in the Kevin Martin podcast, they keep talking about Gen Zers being pulled in every which way. I think you can convince them to come curl. I think it's very doable. There's always going to be other distractions and options that are open to them. But
I think it comes down to marketing too, as well. Like we said, we grew up in curling families, so that's how we got into the sport. But there's a lot of people whose parents, or a lot of children whose parents don't curl and don't know anything about it.
But they're curious about it enough that they're actually willing to try it.
It's true, but then as a parent, you're like, oh, well, what do I do? Like, it's the how, one, getting the message out there that, hey, this is an option for a sport that your child can play, but then also, this is what you got to do. Like, if you don't know anything about curling, how would you're like, oh, well, it's not like the curling clubs are advertised everywhere. If you drive down the street, odds are you probably don't even know a curling club is there.
That's right. And I've been yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just to finish my point, I guess more marketing initiative geared towards schools, like when you can get school involved, or just throwing a marketing campaign on social media or whatever that's targeting that demographic, and then also their parents, and like showing them like, hey, this is how you get your, like, just educating them a little bit into like how to get into the sport.
Yeah, and I think the big recruitment needs to be in particular with, I mean, we're talking about people our age, but let's be honest. Let's aim for more juniors. It's cheaper than hockey, a lot cheaper than hockey. It's a good sport. It teaches good values. It teaches sportsmanship and
there's a lot of life skills.
There's
that
a lot of
teaches you.
Yeah, patience and so much. And I've been racking my brain for a long time about how is it that our school that just put out a very little tiny advertisement got 30 something kids. It was so many kids, we had to be like, we can't fit you all in the taxis. We're gonna have to cut people, which was totally against what we wanted everybody to come try it. So I've been trying to think, why did that work so well? How can we translate that to other curling clubs? And I don't know. I think part of it is that maybe kids are just naturally curious. At our high school, the kids sign up for anything. We put out an activity, they sign up. Are they experienced with it? Maybe not. But if we put out we're going to have a gardening club or a cooking club or a play, we get kids signing up. And I love, what's one of the nice things, I love the mentality that kids have of, I don't know what this is, but I'm just going to try it.
Well, maybe that could be a good idea for clubs in addition to their open houses, because open houses are open for everyone. But if they do an open house style event partnered with a school or a couple schools, or somehow can get involved with like the gym program, being like, hey, for 2 weeks, if there's a nearby school, get them into the curling club during the day, something like that.
Yeah. I know we're running long, but like you and I have done that. We coached at a high school, or I had a job coaching for a local high school many years ago. And when I couldn't do it, I got you to replace me. And that was part of that was their phys ed program at that school. Now, a couple of them did pursue curling, but that was their phys ed program. Now, unfortunately, they were not interested long-term in curling. They kept telling me as much. They were.
But you never know. Maybe these kids, they're like, these were high school kids. They do it for gym class because they have to. But then 10 years from now, and they're in their mid-20s looking for a new activity, like, oh, I played curling. That was fun, and kind of get into it. Like, they have that taster of it, of what
that's
it's
it.
like.
And I gave them homework. I have to say this. I just because I was kind of depressed that none of them were interested in actually curling. I said, okay, well, here's your homework. The Tournament of Hearts starts next week. You all are going to get a province. You need to go home and look up who the team is from that province. And these were very academically driven kids. So the moment I said you have an assignment, their ears perked up. They were listening. And this kid came to me and gave me this beautiful clear plastic folder. He'd put in like effort decorating it, making it look beautiful,
Aww.
showing me the players on Saskatchewan's team. And I didn't have the heart to tell him, this is last year's team, not this year's.
Oh, no.
I know that's not related to anything we're doing, but I like funny
I know
stories.
when I was substituting, I just had them run drills. I was like, okay, we're doing takeout drills.
Yep.
That's good. Yeah, so we definitely covered a lot of points. I guess just to recap, because we were on a more positive note, because we were kind of bashing
a little cynical.
We were a little cynical. But just a brief summary of what was on the list of reasons why clubs had an increase in membership. So number one was a good facility, something clean, modern, up to date, with like good programs. Two, the no late draws. Like people just did not like them, so they changed their season or like the leagues around so that there was no late draws. Good learn to curl initiatives. So, like we said, all the clubs kind of have them, but I think just having a way that it's integrated better in the club as a whole.
Right.
And then finally, increased marketing and fun leagues, modified league schedules, shorter games, that kind of thing. Like we touched upon, just a flexibility and a change in how the leagues are run. Yeah.
And just kind of a final thought on that is that I know there's not a lot going on in the curling world right now, but I think this is the critical time for clubs to be actually discussing this because they're not planning their season anymore, right? There's not much to be had. I think it's really important that they get together now and plan what they're going to do post-pandemic, because I could be wrong about this, but one of my theories is that there is going to be a lot of interest the moment that it's safe to go back to some aspect of normal life. I know for me, I've had friends come up to me going, the moment this is over, the moment it's safe to leave our house again, I want to try curling.
I want to add to that, being that like I think the moment that we'll be able to start curling again, or that life goes a little more back to normal, is going to coincide with the next Winter Olympics, which is next winter. And history has shown after every Winter Olympic, there is an increase in interest in curling.
It's the perfect storm of everything that we want for recruiting members. So we got to be ready for it. And I think the thing is that you'll get a lot of people that are curious. You'll even get some skeptics, because I was thinking the other day, I'm going to be a lot more open-minded than I used to be post-pandemic. Like if you call me up after the pandemic and be like, hey, I have opera tickets. Normally I'd be like, I've got things to do, but hell, I'll do it. I'll go to anything after this is done. I'll go watch paint dry. I'll go to an opera. I'm trying to think of something else that, I will do anything. If you ask me to do, I will do whatever. And I imagine I'm not the only person thinking like that. So curling clubs, take advantage of those people. We're willing to do anything. It's a perfect time.
Yeah, I think definitely take this time. It's a perfect time to reevaluate their business plan if they have one. Because not only hopefully there'll be an increase in interest next year, but also like they're gonna have to recoup the losses from this year, if not next year.
We just came up with a slogan for you: curling, more fun than opera. I don't know.
Oh, all right. Well, that's it for now. If you have any more ideas, we'll do a part 2 to this, because I'm sure we can talk about it for days. If you have any ideas or things you've noticed that like curling clubs could improve, or things you don't like in your own curling club, definitely can write us an email at behindthet.podcast@gmail.com. Leave a comment on YouTube, or follow us on Instagram at behindthet.curling. That's it for this week. Bye.
See you next time.